Over the last 8 hours, I helped an email agency productize their services by replacing Notion, Slack, spreadsheets, and a pile of duct-taped tools with a single piece of client-facing software. And I didn't write a single line of code. This video is for business owners that want to grow by productizing their services, and for builders and automators that want to turn their workflows into real, scalable software systems. In a moment, I'll demo the finished agency operating system so you can see how it works in production. Then I'll take you through the entire end-to-end build, step by step, showing you how this was created in one day, using AI and no-code tools like Lovable and Supabase, and how you can apply the same approach instead of relying on a suite of stitched-together tools. If you don't know me, I'm Sean. I've run large product teams, managed multi-million-pound budgets, and shipped enterprise-grade internal tools and SaaS products the long way. Today, I help founders and SMEs build AI-enabled internal software that lets one person do the work of an entire team, faster, cheaper, and simpler, without engineers, heavy budgets, or months of development. The goal is clean workflows, fewer tools, happier teams, and more profit. And remember, you can learn to build these AI-enabled systems yourself inside my Stack Labs community, or let my team at Foundana build them for you. Either way, your business works faster, smarter, and with less overhead. Both links are in the description. Okay, so let's get into it. First, let's go through a demo of the finished software. Okay, it's been a long day of building, but we've got the MailMob platform up and running. It includes the client-facing productized service and the admin backend portal for the team to manage all of the requests. So let's jump right in. First of all, we're going to sign up a new account. Let's call this demo account, and I'm just going to go demo account and give it a password. Let's create the account. And okay, it's giving me a warning about the password, but let's go into the onboarding process. So a client is signing up to the service and they're declaring that they're either a single brand or an agency. In this case, we're just going to be a single brand, and we're called Demo Brand, and the website is demo.doc. Okay, and we're setting this up. Here we're into MailMob, and we're now going through the onboarding process. So we haven't uploaded a video, but the client can upload one to explain this is the first step that you'd follow. You'd watch the video, then they'd be prompted to set up their brand guidelines. So you've got this tool that allows you to check the website, add in some logos, add their brand colors, and assign primary and secondary accent colors, for example. All done, beautiful, and add some fonts even. So subheading font is Oswald, and we'll add that, and we'll add a header that is Poppins. Okay, so those fonts are set up. Add some copy guidelines, friendly, and visual guidelines is bold. Okay, and we won't add some asset links, but this is where folders would be saved so that they can be accessed later. We're 63% through our brand guidelines here, but as a client, I'm done with that, so I'm going to complete the setup. I'm going to get rid of this reminder, and then I'm going to create my first email request. So I'm doing it for Demo Brand, which is the brand that we set up. I want a campaign. Title is New Launch for Product, and this is going live this weekend. The brief is a new product launch, 50% off, and audience is everyone. And it's a special promo, so I'm going to enable the second page and say save 50 is the promo code, and it's starting this weekend and ending the day after. I'm going to say everything and copy none here, but the CTA link is clickhere.com, and no special terms and conditions. Keep saying no and none. Okay, submitting the request. So as a client, within 5 or 10 minutes, I've set up a brand guidelines and I've submitted a request, and I can come back to the dashboard now, and as I've been through the onboarding, I can see that I've had recent activity. The demo account has created the new brand and submitted a new request even that can be linked here. Got my team, got my brands, one requested email. All right, so I can even deep dive into the request, and we can see that there's some communication elements here, which we'll explain how they work shortly, but we've got all of the details of the promo and the email logged here. I can see this in table view, or I can go to the board view and I can see that this has been requested, and it should progress along here as the MailMob team slowly build out the email. Finally, in settings, I've got myself as a user. I'm part of the demo brand organization. I can add additional team members. I'm not going to do that now, but I can get them onto the platform, and I can even add additional brands if I wanted to run this as an agency. But for now, I'm happy just as a single brand. I've got the notification preferences set up, so I'm going to get alerted about any change to the request, and also any comment that's been added on the request itself. All right, awesome. So that is the setup for a new client, and with that done, the team at MailMob will have received this new alert on a request that's been logged. Let's jump out now of the client perspective and come back in from the MailMob perspective. Excellent. I am now signed in, as the admin of the account, and here you can see as an admin there's a lot more requests going on, there's a lot more things going on because there's a heap more of users on the account, there's a lot of other things. But what we can see here is that 2 minutes ago demo account was created, so there was a new account that was generated and the brand was created and a new submission of a request was received. So we can come into the request and we can actually see here all of the requests that have been received, and I can filter down and have a look at the most recent request that was submitted. I can also look at everything in one go and look at all of the requests along a board for which need to be created and assigned. Now, because I'm running this agent, I would like to move these. So the one that just got created, okay, I've had a look at it, and I'm going to bring this into here, and I'm actually going to assign this to a team member. And that's now been assigned to a team member, and I can open the request and even add some internal notes. Hey guys, get onto this one. Now this note is an internal note, but we've also got the ability to do client communication. So I can talk back to myself in the demo account that was just created and say, seen this and we're on it. Smiley face, because we are nice to them. Cool, and that has been logged and will be showing on their side. I'll also send an email alert that this comment has been left on the account by this person that created it. So they'll be sent out that notification. They'll also get the notification because it was moved across to in progress, so they can see and track the activity that is going on. Now, this is ultimately the system that MailMob team can use to manage all of their requests. They'll be slowly working to build out the emails and communicate back here with links to provide to the customer to say, hey, your email has now been drafted and ultimately completed and pushed to Klaviyo. In the settings section, it's slightly different because you're not a client in this perspective, but instead you have, as an admin, the MailMob team access and all of the admin rights. So the admin rights allows you to see all of the user accounts, whether they're internal or external, or specifically for any individual organizations that have been set up. But you can also view all of the brands that have been set up on the product as they're generated, and an activity log of all the things that have happened. So here as well, we're saying the comment was added, it was a new launch product, and look here, we've got the comment that I just added. So you can see all of the things of requests being created or when they were assigned, like I just did, and you can filter by brand, so you can really understand all of the things that's going on with the overall service that MailMob are offering. And as an admin, you can keep a real close attention on everything and make sure that everything is under control. So then this whole request dashboard becomes the home base for the organization in the Kanban view or the table view if they want. They can also look at who is assigned or who's looking after certain pieces of work. I can see if I'm assigned to a piece of work and if I need to do anything. If I'm logging in as a MailMob team member as opposed to an admin, I can't move things across, but I can actually submit things for review, and this will then trigger someone internally to look at that email and make sure that it's signed off and communicated to the customer. Then ultimately, we come back into the requests that we were looking at. Let's go to all assignees. Let's go back into this new launch for the product. Let's say it's all been completed. So I can change this into completed and come back here and comment and say all ready to go in Klaviyo. Here's the link, and I'll just go link.com to simulate how this would work, so the customer's now on top of this and they've been made aware that the email is delivered. And that is that. We've got the summary over the entire organization of all the requests, how many in progress, how many reviewed, and how many completed, for keeping track of everything that's going on. So yeah, that's the system and the end-to-end build for the MailMob platform. Alrighty, and now we can run through the full build process. Let's get stuck into it.
Okay, so this is the 6-part framework that I teach in the Stack Labs community. We're going to go through the first 3 sections at a high level now, the results of these sections, and then we'll build front end, back end, and get to launch hopefully together as part of this video. So first of all, who is MailMob? MailMob is an agency that delivers unlimited emails on demand to their customers, primarily in the e-commerce space. So they have a process where they can onboard a customer, then they submit unlimited email requests, and these get reviewed and approved by the client before being pushed into Klaviyo. The model is relatively straightforward, and it's a retainer model at different levels of service, but as it's a email request as essentially a productized service, the customer can request unlimited amounts, but there's only a certain amount of requests that are active at any one time, and depending on the tier, changes how fast they get turned around or the types of requests that they can have. In the product thinking section, we go into the business model so that we can understand how they make money and support their needs through software. We then have a look at the jobs to be done, process flows, and how we want to plan out the build for the internal software. I'm going to start with the lean canvas initially, which is the business model, and just explain that very briefly. We saw from their website at a high level what they do, but they are offering email design service for customers that are mainly small to mid-sized businesses, e-commerce brands in particular that have a Shopify store and a Klaviyo integration. They want to get more emails out, and creating emails is a painful exercise. It takes a lot of time, especially you want them on brand and high quality. The problem really is the complexity and hassle of running email marketing campaigns for e-commerce brands, and there's quite a lot of technical understanding around deliverability, and other main agencies on retainer fees can cost quite a lot. So the solution is a complete email marketing platform, providing the automations or campaign management, focusing on deliverability with integrations into key tools. So it's a productized service, so you can request as many emails as you want, and then they follow through the build process and then pull the next email upon completion. So main thing here is that we talked through the revenue streams, but there's different models. They're all about a continuous pull system, so a customer can request different emails, and there's a team of email strategists and designers. There's software to support this, which are currently a whole lot of different tools which we want to consolidate. And by doing so, we should hopefully reduce the cost base and also increase throughput, which will help the company make more money. So if we have a look at the jobs to be done, and this is an output of an exercise done with the client themselves, have clients, which are e-commerce brand owners typically, that want to drive sales with their email campaigns and flows. Account managers, an internal role that deliver the on-brand emails for the clients. They liaise with the clients. The email strategist is internal and tends to scope up the email concepts. And graphic designer delivers all the visuals when building out the email. Main process flows include onboarding a client, creating an email request as and when needed, and then the scoping, designing, and delivery of those emails themselves, and finally managing the upcoming campaign planner. So this is essentially all of the dates moving forward about when certain emails are scheduled and making sure that they synchronize with special releases or promotions that the customers want to run. So these are the four main process flows that we'll be looking to build for. How are we going to do this? Well, we'll start with a single branded user interface. So this will be the portal where anyone can create a request form, so create an email request, and then the Kanban system for tracking these email requests. We're not going to worry about roles initially. So the 3 internal roles with assignments and how those tasks are allocated to all of the individuals within the team. Finally, an external role, which is the client essentially that can log into the platform as well. From there, eventually we'll look to add the concept of brand guidelines and ultimately an onboarding process for new clients. But this is the order in which we want to go through it, and we don't want to overcomplicate things too soon. So we'll start in the sequence and then slowly add functionality as we go. Next phase is the wireframing. So here's an example of just the look and feel, I guess, of what the SaaS dashboard will look like. Relatively clean and simple. We've got some typography and color palette from the client that we can incorporate into this overall SaaS design layout, and have created some initial mock-ups on how a pop-up or a email request form would look. So this includes things like the brand that has been requested for, the type of request, the dates, email objectives, the audience, these types of things. This is the initial entry point into the application. It's the primary functionality of creating email requests. And so we've got a bit of a view for what that might look like. Then you might have an overall portal with requests tracking, so total requests, how many are in progress, how many are completed, and these requests would have like a Kanban tracking system. So I've also taken some screenshots of some examples of what this might look like. So simple Kanban, new, in progress, pending, and completed requests, and you can see them progress through the system. You've got assignments to individuals and slowly can march these through this process. That's all the mockups we're going to generate. Obviously, as we build and go into the front-end development, we'll be using the no-code builder like Lovable, and this will allow us to almost generate mockups and build at the same time. So we don't need to over-engineer this step. We're just trying to look for inspiration to then bring into the build process. Okay, so that's the overall setup for the scoping, which includes understanding the brand, how we want to build out the key features in the product, and starting to wireframe some of the screens that we're going to focus on. Now we can move in the build phase. Okay, so we're starting the build process. We're going to use ChatGPT to help us plan out the initial scoping for the Lovable prompt, which is where we're going to build our front end. So if we want to first give some context, we can grab the value proposition summary for the product and give this to ChatGPT. So I'm just going to give it some context, and we can start to build out basically a product requirements document. I want to build a product requirements document for an internal application for MailMob. MailMob has the below unique value proposition, and I'm going to insert now the EVP, and then what we're going to do is just start to ask it to help us in the planning process. Please take us through some steps to get to a PRD that we can add to Lovable. Let's plan this process together. Okay, so it's asking for the purpose, the users, and the jobs to be done, and the high-level features essentially on what we want to build out. This is all quite normal stuff that would be included in a PRD, and this is also why we have already scoped out some of the jobs to be done along with the process flows and the how. So we can now just pop this into here, and here are the main jobs to be done. We're going to be designing for 4 key roles. However, initially we just want to ignore the roles. We will include this in later steps, but this is included. Here are the roles. Now going to grab the process flows. Here are the main process flows that we need to cater for. I'm going to grab our proposed approach. Here's the proposed approach for the sequencing of the build. The purpose of this build is to help MailMob with an internal operating system that allows them to run their processes more smoothly rather than across 4 or 5 different independent tools that are sellotaped together. We want to have a centralized tool that allows clients to log in, they can request emails, and MailMob can then track the progression of them and communicate back to the client when things are completed. This will mean operations is much smoother, and they can productize the service much better and advertise it on various marketing channels. Please go ahead and create a very lightweight PRD that I can then fine-tune when I add it into Lovable. Okay, so we now have a lightweight PRD that we can take into Lovable. You can do some of this planning steps in Lovable as well, but I like to keep this on a separate thread that I can then use later. I'm going to take it all down to the constraints and assumptions, copy this across, and we're going to Lovable, and we're going into a new project in Lovable. I'm going to paste it in, but I also want to work through it and make sure that everything looks good before doing so. Remember that this is the first prompt that Lovable will see, so weight it quite highly when it comes to memory and what gets used for the prompt history as you're building up the product. I'm just going to turn on chat, which will mean that we're not going to build anything just yet. And I'm going to put at the end just a quick explanation of how we're going to go about doing this. And this is important. We need to make sure that we don't try to do too much in the first go. And this is a common issue with people using Lovable. Do not proceed to the build. This is all for context. And instead, I would like to start with just a single screen mock-up for the SaaS application that I can provide branding guidelines and general layout structure before we actually implement any of the functionality of the project. Okay, I'm going to, and now we're in more of the chat interface, which will just make sure that we're planning things out before we're actually building. Okay, so it's asking us where we want to start. I want to start with the dashboard as opposed to the request form. Want it to be relatively clean and minimal, so let's avoid that. Yes, I do have logo colors and fonts ready, so let's click on that and we can submit this form. Okay, so it's asking for logo, brand colors, and typography. I can upload those now. Here is a black and white version of the MailMob logo to be used in various places throughout the application. Here are the primary colors from the brand guidelines along with the typography system. Okay, so now we've uploaded all of the context for the design system, including the color palette, the fonts, and the page that we want to start with. And to finalize the dashboard mockup, there's a few questions. I'm just going to say, for now, let's not add any elements to the summary, perhaps just a very simple summary card like the number of requests, active requests, and completed this month. We don't want to build any database just yet. We will use Supabase as the database, but this will get integrated after we've done the design elements first. Okay, we want to have an always visible sidebar, and we've got everything. The important thing to remember here is just doing a single mockup. We're not trying to build the entire, there's no such thing as a single prompt, so we're trying to really keep Lovable restricted to what it can do first, and we're focusing on the visual style and guidelines. So let's do it, implementing the plan now. Okay, so this is what it has come back with, which is a reasonably good, let's just confirm how well it has replicated the design system, for example. So it looks like it's taken the dark azure color for the actual sidebar. The other colors and accent colors don't seem to be coming through, so we'll make sure we inject those into it in certain places. In particular, the button color should be the olive green. I want to use that as the primary CTA button, and we'll try to refer back to this as we go. But for a start, it's at least acknowledged some of those elements. It seems to have perhaps used the instrument serif in the heading, where instead we should really be in it. So we might want to adjust that. So let's do that first before we go any further and just get the look and feel functioning as we want. It also hasn't picked up on the logo, so let's swap that out. So first of all, I'm just going to grab the white logo and ask it to add that in. Please add in the white logo as attached in as the top logo in the sidebar. Okay, so that's pulled that in, and now I just want to make sure that our primary CTA color is set up correctly. Make sure that the primary CTA for all buttons is going to be using the olive green color from the brand guidelines. Code is, I've just pulled this hex code from the guideline. This way at least we should have a bit more of a universal color palette. And finally, to ask it to play back what the actual font setup is. Okay, and just note, in order to not chew through your credits, when you're asking it certain questions about the code base, always use the chat mode. That way you won't be using credits. So while that's running in the background, prepare this next chat. Please list out all of the fonts and associated heading schemas, body text, for example, that is being used, so I can validate whether the setup is correct. So it's a good idea to ask things in this way rather than just telling it to do new things on top of it. First validate what is actually going on in the background and then update it after that. Okay, so we're seeing what fonts have been loaded into an instrument serif, it looks like, and we've got some rules on how they're used. Body text enter. Yeah, all headings H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and 6 are all instrument serif. We don't want this. We want headings to be in enter. So for now, I'm just going to make the instruments serif H5 and 6, and 1 through 4 can be enter as well. Let's update H1 through H4 to be enter, and we can use H5 and H6 remaining in instrument serif for subheadings, but in general, I want to use enter across the entire app. Okay, so we've made these changes, and we've just been chatting at this point, so let's implement that. Okay, so they're all updated. Let's do the same for the color palette. Can you please list out the color palette and how that schema is set up so I can inspect it and adjust any changes as need be? I'm going to put it back in chat mode. Please share the color schema comment to see if there's any changes needed. Okay, so it looks like it's built in a dark mode. I don't really want to play with the dark mode at all, or keep it in light mode always. There's nowhere to switch it here anyway, so for now it's fine to ignore. Primary CTA is the olive green, the text is charcoal dark tones, background warm off-white, dark charcoal, accent is light coral peach, which hasn't come from anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just adjust that one to the medium lavender from the design guidelines. Please change from the light coral peach to the medium lavender, which is provided as part of the design guidelines. And I'm going to provide the hex code for that. And this should at least get us more closely aligned with the brand guidelines, and we can move on. Okay, finally, of course, it's always good to test this. So we can see that the welcome back Jane and the request this month is not an enter, so we might want to just interrogate that. What font What fonts are the welcome back Jane and request this month in the mockup using, as I would expect them to be Inter as headings 1 through 4, for example. Okay, so it looks like they're hard coded. So let's move these to be based on the guidelines. Let's make the welcome back an H1 and request this month can be H5 and update these so they are referenced back to the actual brand guidelines and schema. Finally, the only other thing I notice is that this accent color here seems to be much lighter than it should be, so there may be some kind of filtering effect applied on that. I want to get rid of that. This is just planning this out. Let's implement this plan, and while it's doing that, I'm going to load up the next prompt. In the icon next to the active request this month card, the color seems to be a filtered effect. There seems to be a filtered effect on that, and the color isn't coming through as the full CTA action green. Can we check this and update accordingly, please? Okay, while it's doing that, just note none of these other pages are working, and that's completely fine. So we've just got a mock-up here. We know that these are placeholders. We also just got a Jane Doe user. It's not at the moment not an admin nor a client or anything. In fact, we're just going to treat the entire setup as a generic account with no user roles, permissions, anything. This allows us just to keep things simple initially and slowly build this out. Please make the icon in the active card a darker contrast color against the background of the green. Remember, another principle in general is just if you see things, a quick fix, you may as well do them at the point in time that you see them and complete a full piece of work before moving on to further functionality. This is just trying to complete this as quickly as possible so that we don't move on until we're really comfortable that the functionality of the minimum requirements of what we're building is actually working. I should also point out, obviously, this 8 and the 23 is coming from nowhere. This is a placeholder. It won't be linked to anything in the database, but we will come back later to filling this out in the database. Okay, now that we've got that going, let's start by putting in a request CTA in the dashboard. This is going to be the primary CTA, so something up the top right. Please add a CTA button for new request in the top right hand side of the dashboard page. This potentially could persist throughout all pages on the app, seeing as this is the main action that we want the customers to be able to take. I want the button to then create a pop-up modal that we can populate later. For now, let's just create the button and the pop-up, and you can give the request a simple title and description that we'll start to build out the functionality with. Again, no database linkage, just mockups at this point. Okay, so we've got the new request button in here. It looks nice. It's using the color as specified. Let's hit new request. Okay, and we've got this new request modal. Cancel and submit request. It's also picking up this other color, which is great. So that's great. That's working well. It hasn't introduced a new page, and we can see what's going on here. From here, I think it's important to build out our request page, which will consolidate all of the list view of the requests. So let's now build out our second page. Okay, now we can build out the requests view, which will start off as a list tabular view of all the requests that a user has submitted. Once again, let's not overcomplicate this, and I don't want to create any database entries starting with mockup data. Remember, always initially remind it to work with mockups and just get the design working before trying to build any of the sophisticated integration into the back end. Okay, so the request page should be created. We can come in here now. It's given it an ID, a title, type, status, when it was created, quantity. I'm not sure what quantity is done is even related to, and a request form has a title and description. So there's a few things that is obviously a bit funny here. It's invented a few of these fields. They don't relate to the request form. So let's just really simplify this down so we don't catch ourselves out in the future. It's always good to clean up as you go. I would like you to, for now, remove the type and the quantity columns, as we don't have any way to really handle those. ID can be auto-generated, created is inferred, and the status is very important, will come later, so we can keep that in. It will obviously default to perhaps requested or initial upon creation. So I just want you to remove those two columns, please. Okay, so we now have the cleaned up request view, able to switch back between the dashboard and request. Dashboard is the home page and request has its own page or URL extension. We can obviously now start to see some interaction in the portal. What I'm going to do, I don't really like that this request sits here, and I'm going to put these up into this header section and also align this header section. The header menu with the new request button in it is misaligned with the logo MailMob line. Can we try to align those or even fix up the segregators somehow so it doesn't look skewed? Can we also please add in the tab headings, so the welcome back Jane or the request page heading, for example, along with the subtext, and add those up into the header section as well, so we've got more room to play with in the primary tab section. I've given it two things to do here. These are not huge tasks, but in general we should try to avoid asking the AI to do multiple things at once. There's a higher risk that things can go wrong and you're going to have to reverse everything after that fact, and you can't really isolate certain things. So the functionality in Lovable allows you to go back to revert to previous versions, and if you've bundled multiple things into one thing, it obviously can cause some issues. It's trying to do these steps one by one. I can see the alignment of the header section already, which is good, and now we've moved this title section into the top, which looks a lot nicer from my perspective. It's done one change, fixed it, and then done another to cause the skewness again. So I'm going to have to go back and fix that up. The header section with title and subheading and the request button is too big. Can you reduce the padding and make sure that it aligns the primary logo sectional divider? Much better. Okay, so now we're starting to get a bit of the overall layout and functionality to life. It's time to start thinking about how we're going to store and manage this data and set ourselves up for success with some of the tooling, GitHub integration, for example, to make sure code changes and all the tracking is much easier to manage in future before going too far into the complexity of the functionality of the app. Okay, so it's time to start thinking about data and how that's going to be managed, essentially the back end for the project. For this purpose, we're going to use Supabase. I'm creating a new project. You'll need to set up an organization and then create a project. I have got this on a pro plan, so I'll be paying for this, but in your case, you should be able to set up your first project as a free project and won't need to pay for it. We need to generate a database password, and I'm going to create that in Europe as that's closest to me. Might even be, yeah, Europe is fine. Okay, so the app is now created. I'm going to wait some time, just note that it'll set up the project. This will take a little bit of time, but we can go back into Lovable to connect it. In Lovable, they have their own cloud. I'm not a fan of this, so I'll explain it in another video. But for now, trust that it is best to come into the settings for the project, go down to connectors, go to Supabase, and here we want to connect a project, and I want to connect the new project. It looks like it's not yet created, so I'll wait for that to get created and then we can connect it to the project. Okay, it looks like the app has been generated now. The project has been created. Let's have a look, refresh this to settings, connectors, Supabase, connect a project, taking its time. Okay, so here we go. We have got the MailMob app, Supabase instance and project connected to the project. Brilliant. It's going to now explain a number of things, and yeah, we don't need to worry too much about it at the moment. It is a blank project. The next thing we want to do is connect GitHub. This will manage and track all the code changes. So here you want to connect GitHub. I can explain how this is done in another video, but you'll connect your account, connect project, and we're going to want to accept that this is a two-way sync and transfer. This will create a new project in GitHub for which you can adjust what it's being called and things like that at another point. For example, here it's called currently MailMob Flow. I'm going to call MailMob and save. Okay, so now we have GitHub connected and our Supabase database connected. All right, now that we've got the foundations for the project set up, it's time to go deeper into the new request. At the moment, the new request form is just floating. It doesn't sync to anything, and it just creates input fields for title and description. In reality, there's a lot more that needs to come through from a client when they're requesting a new email. So if we go into some pre-work that I've done with the client, we've got a process flow for all of the elements that we want to incorporate into this form. So let's try to start building those in to the form on the MailMob app. So in short, we capture a brand name. This could also be if a client has multiple brands. We may need to handle multiple brands in the future. The request date, this can be done automatically, so we don't need to have this in the form. Though, I'm just double checking, yes, there is a go live date, so the request date is different. We're capturing the date at which it was requested. The type, a campaign, a flow, or a sign-up form. From there, we need to determine if it's a promotion. If it's a promotion, there's going to be lots of additional information that is needed. And from there, there's the brief, go live date, segment of who it's been sent to, and any specific imagery that may be needed. So let's add this in piece by piece. And because this is a relatively complex piece of work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it onto chat mode and start to build this out in a bit more detail with the help of Lovable in a chat before we hit implement. So let's start with the brand name and the request type. Now we need to build out the new request form. We will have a concept of a brand, which will be a drop-down selector for which brands the user or client is requesting for. For now, we'll have a default, and let's have a placeholder brand, and this can be called example brand. And the next thing we want to add into the request form is a type of request. So type can be campaign, it can be flow, and it can be a pop-up form. So email sign-up form. So let's call them an email campaign, or a campaign bracket email, a flow bracket email, and then a pop-up bracket form. Let's start by adding that in. Again, let's not build out any of the database functionality. Let's simply get the mock-up done first, and then we can come back and do the database. Okay, while it's working, we can come back and see what else we need to build into the form. So there's this question around whether it's a promotional email. So that basically means it's a promotion or a special offer. So we need to have some kind of tick box or ability to expand an additional section that shows up in the case that it is a promotion. We might have a discussion with Lovable to figure out the best way to do this. Okay, this has had a think about this and building up the plan. I'm going to also say, please also add in a tick box selector perhaps that indicates whether or not it is a promotion or a special offer that we need to cater for. In this case, we will then need to provide additional information such as discount codes or otherwise. I'll list these out below. Let that load, and the things that we want to include are promotion dates, T's and C's, copy, links, and featured products. First of all, we need to have a discount code. We need to have the promotion dates, start and end, for example, any featured products, copy that needs to be included as a separate field, as well as any particular CTA links that we need to link to, and finally, any specific T's and C's that need to be included in the email. Note, all of these fields are only relevant when tick box is selected, so you'll need to think of how to best implement this, whether it's a second step in the form or an expanded section that only opens up when the tick box is selected. Okay, let's add that to our planning chat. I think given this, we can probably drop the title and description, but let's add that shortly. And the next steps that we're going to have to do is add in go live date, segment, and specific imagery. Okay, it's recommending the expandable section, keeps it in one view, nice and easy. Yeah, I tend to think that's fine, but we'd still have some additional form elements to add, so make sure it's aware of those. In the case that it is not a promotion, we'll need to have a generic campaign brief. We currently have description. I would like to change this to brief for that purpose. We also need to have a go live date, and this applies in every email, not just the promotional emails. Finally, again, we need audience and segmented audience information. Maybe call this target audience field for all emails. Okay, that should now have hopefully all of the requirements we need for the new request form. The idea here is to get the request form sorted, designed out before we're changing any database structure, and so that we know that it's going to capture everything we need. Let's implement the plan. Okay, I've noticed when this change has been implemented that the color scheme has reverted, so I'm going to see what's going on there. With the last change, the color scheme and font schema, for example, has reverted. The Welcome Back Jane, for example, is no longer the inter font that was specified, and the new request button is no longer the CTA green color that we specified. Why is this? Rather than just asking it to fix it, I'm actually chatting with it first as to try to diagnose why this may have come about. If you try to fix everything and it hasn't properly diagnosed it, it can cause issues. So it's best practice to have the discussion first and then figure out what's going on before making any changes. So you just need to always be checking and looking at what the current state of the product is as you're making changes. I've tried a browser hard refresh and have waited some time, and it appears that it's still not rendering as it should be. Please confirm as to what the root cause might be and investigate further. Okay, I've logged in with an incognito window, and yes, it appears that now the formatting is correct. So I'll just confirm this. Logging in via an incognito window appears to have addressed the problem. However, on this primary window, I still see the issue. Is there any way to fix this in my current preview? I'm not so sure that it is the injection. So I'm going to leave this for now and come back to it. I have seen that it works fine when we're in an incognito tab, which is the same browser, although it may not have the extensions applied. So let's just check this. I'm going to implement this and we'll see if this works. If it doesn't fix it, and I would suggest reverting in the case that it doesn't fix the issue. Otherwise, you've got fixes on fixes which haven't actually resolved the root cause. Okay, it appears to have overridden it and worked now. So I'm going to leave this in place. In the request, and I can see a few things. When we click on the promotional special offer, it looks like it's expanding, but there's no room in the pop-up window. So I'm going to ask it to try and consolidate and make this request form smaller to be able to handle it better. In the create new request form, when I hit tick box, it appears to expand, but it goes below the viewport. Let's first start by consolidating the brand and type up on the same row, and they can use 50% split on that row. Let's also try to perhaps squeeze things up a little bit more and perhaps even expand the width of the pop-up modal to give us more space to work with. You may also need to implement some form of scroll ability in the case that it expands below the viewport. But first of all, let's try to squeeze things up as much as possible. Okay, so we've got the new form in place. We can select the brand, select the request type. This isn't exactly how I specified. I'll come back and fix that up. And the title, go live date is a date selector, brief and target audience, free text. And if we hit this button, we're getting the expansion, but again, it's populating. It's not really got enough room for this. So what do we want to do? I don't like a scroll bar. Let's just debate this. The special promotion or special offer tick box is expanding the form contents to be too large, and we lose the ability to fill in all of the content, and the cancel and submit request buttons are lost. What is the best approach to fix this? I don't really like the idea of a scroll bar within the modal, so perhaps it's a two-step form where we have the special offer information on the next page and we just have a tick box to confirm whether it is or not and open it up at that point, open to suggestions. Okay, so it's offered a few proposals, a two-step wizard, an accordion that's collapsible, tabs within the modal, or slide out drawer. What are we saying? Tabs has a clearer organization, no extra clicks to submit. They might miss that tab though. We do need a back for yes when we have a two-step wizard, but I think it's probably the cleanest, and it is suggesting that the two-step wizard is going to be the cleanest approach. So it's making a proposal on how that will do it. Just checking this brand right up next, and then the next. The request and only on step 2 is discount code, start, end date, featured products, copy to include CTA links, terms and conditions. But it's only if the promotional details is checked. Otherwise, it will simply proceed. So that way it keeps it as a simple form. You don't have the two-step in the case where you've got a simple email. So I think that works well. Let's do that. Okay, so this is looking really nice now. We've got this initial form, and when you click on, this is a promotional special offer, it indicates that it's now step 1 of 2 and you have to go into the next phase. It looks to have created an issue, but the first step is working well. So what are we saying? Created. Okay, let's see if it can self-diagnose this. Upon clicking next in the new request, when we have a promotion declared, it's causing an error. Request created, and then open brackets for undefined has been submitted. Please investigate what's going on here and propose a solution. We should note that I didn't fill in anything in the form, and we haven't yet determined if any of these fields are mandatory selections. So this could be causing some issues, but let's see what it has to say. First of all, okay, undefined brand name. Yeah, I think I might just say, thank you, that's useful. Yes, let's proceed with the fixes. But along with this, we should also enforce that a brand is selected and a type is selected. Let's start with these two and the title perhaps as being the 3 mandatory fields that must be selected to prevent issues with data fields not being completed. Okay, I've tried to select something that's saying that a title needs to be entered, and it hasn't. It's errored as opposed to providing a prompt. Can we please not have the error in the case that brand or type is unselected? We should instead have something like the title indicator that shows that it needs to be populated if possible. We should also put an asterisk next to these 3 fields so we know that they're mandatory going in. Okay, so it's added that validation. As always, we're going to test everything as we go. So we've got the asterisk to indicate that they're mandatory. Let's select this one, let's put a title, and let's submit this request. Right, so it is now indicating that this one needs to be selected. So let's do this. Again, this is now saying that it's been created, which is great. However, I wanted to test that the promotion would work. So let's do this, test 2, and a promotion now step 1 of 2, next, and we've got our promotion fields. In this case, I don't know if I just yet want to make any of this mandatory, but at least it's popping up and it's possible to select these fields. These are all free text, CTA links, terms and conditions. and we can submit request and request created. Okay, so we've now got a functional request form which has special requirements in the case that we indicate that it's a promotion or a special offer, and this will generate a request. At the moment, pretty sure these won't be showing up in these requests because this is placeholder list, and we've explicitly told it don't create any database entries, which we can validate shortly. But for now, we have the functional request form, and we can start thinking about, okay, where does this get stored now that we create a request, which is great progress. And now we're starting to get into database entries. We'll leave it there for now and come back shortly.
Okay, now we want to ensure that these requests are actually being saved. At the moment, we've purely been dealing with mockups essentially. So we want to start sending these requests back into the database in Supabase. So let's just come into Supabase first and check. Here we've got a table editor, and it appears in the public table, in the public schema. We don't have any tables. We have a users table in the auth schema, but there's nothing populated, and this makes sense because it's a blank project, and we've been telling Lovable don't create anything yet. However, now we need to start actually storing the request information. And remembering we're just working with a Jane Doe generic account for the time being, and we're going to come back and look at roles later. But for now, we want to make sure that any new request that comes through is being saved and stored, and then can be visualized on the portal later. So let's start with this process, and I'm going to go in chat mode to plan this out. Now that we have the completed new request form for a request, we should generate our request database, table structure to be able to handle the storage and management of these requests as they come through. So we have all of the information that will come through from the new request form. We will need to, in future, manage who has submitted the request. This is not a requirement just yet, but we need to consider this for planning. We should capture the time that the request is logged, and all of the details of the form. Obviously, I want to try to keep this relatively straightforward and not overcomplicate things. So perhaps a single table capturing all of the requests along with an associated status that we have assigned, and the status for a new request should just be the new request, because a requester doesn't specify the status. That is dictated by where it is in the process. Please plan out this Supabase component and database structure, and how this will save this once a form is submitted. Okay, this point in time, you really don't want to just always blindly approve what the suggestions are. You really want to scrutinize to determine if it's going to be fit for purpose. So let's just see what it's trying to suggest. First of all, we've got the 5 status steps: requested, in progress, review, completed, cancelled. We can start with those. We can always build them out later. Email campaign, flow email, pop-up form. Yes. Brands table. And this will, okay, we're starting to see things that I've mentioned before, that we may want to have different brands. So it's creating a brands table, which makes sense. And then we've got the request table. These are all the fields that we've seen. They've got them as optional. Discount code, created at status. Yes. Yes. Okay. One thing that I've realized is in the scoping, we said that there may be some specific imagery that's come through. I'm going to hold off on this just for now, because that requires file management and will complicate the form. So I'm just going to leave that out, and we'll come back to that in the future. It's going to auto increment the request trigger, and it will provide an ID. And row level security. We've got no authentication. It's understanding that, but we're going to have a policy set up for that. We'll come back to this later. There's some initial brand data that's needed. The example brand will be used. Okay, then the request page, which is this page, which is going to fetch from the table instead of having mock data, which is great. And linking by the submitted by column, it's nullable. Yeah, we'll have auth in future. Status management, controlled in different places. Single table approach and request number that's human readable and referenceable. Okay, this is great. I'm happy with this. Let's implement. I've set it here to always allow on the database changes. You might want to, especially as you're getting started, have this set so you need to individually approve, and that way you can actually inspect them and see what's going on. It helps you learn about the database structure, the SQL queries that are being used in order to update the database. And what's actually happening here is Lovable itself is accessing Supabase and running SQL queries in order to set up the configuration correctly. You don't actually need to do a lot in Supabase, but it's very useful to have it open in the background, and you can start to see here, look, these brands and request table is being created. So now we have this brands table, which has an ID, unique identifier, the name, the example brand that we specified at the start, and when it was created, and requests here, which is currently empty. So this is how you start to see the results of the Lovable agent making changes in the database. Okay, so it's saying that it's complete. So as always, we should be testing this. We can come into request now, and you can see that there's no request, which is great because it's gotten rid of the placeholder and is now should be reading from the database here, which you can see is also empty. Now let's create a new request, and I'm going to do this under example brand. It's going to be an email campaign, my first email. It's going to go live on the 18th. Test brief, content, everyone. And it is a promotion, so we should be prompted here into this next one. It's going to save 20. That starts on the 26th and ends on the 27th. All products, none here, CTA links, TBC, and none. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Let's submit the request. And it has said that this request is created. And it's referencing even the example brand, which is great. Here now, in the requests, look at that. We've got request 001 and title of my first email is status requested, and it shows that it's created. And if we come into here now, we have an additional request that's been populated in the table requests. If you have a look here, we don't populate everything, but you can see that actually in Supabase, we've got all of the fields that I provided when that was generated, which is brilliant. So now we have, for the first time, more than a mock-up running. We've actually got a functional prototype that will allow new requests to be generated and logged and visualized. Of course, it's far from being a fully fledged functional internal app because we're from the perspective of a single user, and there's no way of actually filtering or looking at these from a different perspective. You could think of this as being an admin at the moment. So imagine that no clients had access, that just the internal team were using the tool to log requests and actually look at them from different brands. What that's probably quite an important thing here is also from an admin perspective is actually seeing what brand this is associated with. But we'll cover that later. Now we at least know that we can generate a new email request and view it in the request view, and it looks like, yeah, obviously our dashboard total numbers have not been completed yet, but we'll come back to that. again, we're iteratively building out the functionality and testing as we go. Right, now we're going to add a little bit more depth to the requests summary page, because at the moment it doesn't really give you much information at all. We decided in our scoping that we wanted to be able to see these in a Kanban view so that you can actually see where each request sits along the status process. But also we should be able to really click into these requests and see all of the detail from the original form as well. So let's start with that, and then we can come back and do the status and Kanban view afterwards. On the requests page, we only see a snapshot of the actual request itself. We need to be able to add a way to link into each and every request, so we can click through from the request page to see all of the details of the original request, and we can also build that out in future with things like comments and chat history or additional changes or any type of logging against a single request. For now, let's make sure we've got a way to click into the request. I'm guessing this will add an additional parameter, or will add an additional path under the request URL that allows us to go into a single request. From there, please make sure that the request template itself is a good summary of everything that has been included on the form, and also potentially, no, let's just start with that. We just want to have the summary of everything that is available in the request table that's relevant to be presented to the user. Okay, so we can see now we should have this additional page, which is a template page, and the individual request itself is clickable. So let's click into this. All right, so we've got the request information, brand type, go live date, target audience, created at, and the promotion details. So this looks pretty good. We've got the request identifier and the status. I'm not sure I like how low it sits, so I'm just going to edit this while I've got it in front of me. The back to requests should potentially sit up in the header near the request details title. Also, can we put the status on the far right along with the request ID so that the title and all of that information sits a lot higher, bringing up all of the content on this page much higher? It's good to think from a user perspective and just making sure that everything is nice and clean and understandable as it gets presented, and cleaning this up as you go. Make sure that the project is always in a nice state. I can tell here also the link itself is using the request unique identifier, which is good. It's not actually using the human-friendly request ID, which makes this a bit more secure. Okay, so what's happened here? So we've no longer got this new request header. It's actually put the my first email title up here and this here like this. We've lost the new request button. I think at this point we're actually fine. It's tightened this right up. So yeah, I'm comfortable with this. I think it looks good. So now we can explore each and every email. I'm not 100% sure what will happen if the promotion details are not populated. I'm just going to ask it this question. When we create a request, we have the tick box, obviously, to determine whether or not it's a promotion or not. Is the tick box entry actually saved in the database? And are we using that to control what's shown on the email request page itself. The reason I'm asking this is just whether or not we can hide this based on that field. We should be able to actually check this in the table editor. So if we come in here in the table editor, scroll along, we should be able to even search for this field. But I'm just going to have a look here. Is promotion true? Right, so this is probably from that tick box, and we should be able to therefore use that to actually hide the promotion details view when it's not a promotion. So the is promotion checkbox is saved to the database. The is promotion field is used to control the display. Okay, so as suspected, we're using that to control what is happening here. So I'm comfortable with that. Looks good. Right, now, so we're back onto the request page. We should be able to convert this into a Kanban view as well. Let's do that now. On the requests page, we have a list or tabular view of all of the requests. I would also like to visualize this in a Kanban view where we use the status as the columns. Can we support both options where the user has the ability to toggle between table and Kanban view, implementing a toggle button somewhere that allows the user to switch? Now, at the moment, all of the requests themselves are static and that there's no ability to come in and edit any of these fields. Again, as we start to implement or role-based permissions, we can figure out who can do what. But for now, at the moment, we're just trying to make sure we can get new requests into the system, and then we can visualize where they sit along the status. The good thing about having direct Supabase access as well is if we want, we can set up test data and create additional entries, and then even change some of these fields. You can see here that we've got the 5 status fields that we could move things along, change where they show, and then that will show up visually in the front end as well. Okay, we have a plan. So there's a component that manages the Kanban board itself. Style it with the 5 columns, hover effects on each of them, responsive design, brand colors, the main section to conditionally render, table of Kanban, yep, and loading states. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to do the drag and drop functionality, but we'll test that when it gets created. So we'll implement that now. Okay, we've now got the table and the board. It's not super clear that table's selected. So I might just update that. On the toggle switch, it's not 100% clear that the table is currently selected. I think the contrast between the colors is not strong enough. Can you please make this slightly more visible? It should allow us to easily see that the table view is the current view. Eventually, also, we'll probably put some filters in here so that we can filter by brand, these types of things. We may even want to filter by status or other fields, and even a search. Okay, and let's check out the board view. So, requested, in progress, and review. So, I wonder why we're only getting these. Okay, I can't drag and drop, but I can click into it. Let's go back to our... also, when we're in this view, the board drops out the ability to toggle back and forwards. It's also dropping out the header. So when we're switching to the Kanban view, we're dropping out the toggle button. We're also dropping out the new request button for some reason. Everything should be identical apart from the actual table itself. So we're replacing the table element with the Kanban view. So can we make sure everything else is retained in this page, all apart from list view versus Kanban view? again, you want to just be trying to, on each and every individual change, look for the things that have dropped out as a result. This is testing as you go. Otherwise, if you don't pick them up now, it can cause a whole lot more issues further down the line. So let's get that addressed before we move on to anything else. While it's doing that, I'm going to check here. We have requested in progress, review, completed and cancelled. So really the fields will be requested, in progress, review. And that's what it's decided is relevant, because cancelled is going to be, not shown. It's a cancelled request, and completed is not really necessary in here. So this is fine, I think, that we've only got the 3 out of the 5, and we can, as we add different status fields, we can make sure that they're represented in here as well. Okay, it's saying that it has completed that. Let's see if we can reload this. Table, board. Right, so it has said that it's fixed it, but it hasn't. Oh, no, it has. Okay, so, oh no, sorry. As we switch through to here, it drops out. It is not retaining any memory of the view that it's in, and it's losing the new request button and the toggle. So I'm just going to, this is a common theme sometimes with these types of tools, so you just need to go deeper. The changes you made above have not made any impact on what I'm seeing in the preview pane. It appears as though the new request button and the toggle switcher is still not present once you move into the Kanban view. Please do a thorough analysis and deep dive into why this may be happening and propose a potential solution. I'm also going to turn it to chat mode. It's a good idea just to have the discussion on these things before agreeing on steps forward. Ideally, you want it to be confident on what changes need to happen. Okay, so it's really gone into an in-depth analysis this time and has a proposed solution. I'm going to implement this now. While it's doing this, it's important to note that a table and board view selection is probably going to be something we're going to want to save as a user preference, so that each time they come back, they don't have to switch back to their preferred view. But until we've got user settings and users implemented, we won't be able to do that. Okay, so it says the table view shows correctly. I've implemented all 3 fixes. Let's test this now. I might just refresh. Let's come into requests, and no. Okay. So what can be useful at this point in time is actually grabbing a screenshot of what's happened, and I'm going to grab that screenshot, and I'm going to pop it in here and say, here is the screenshot that's taken from the Kanban view. It is obvious that the 2 elements we're talking about are still missing from here, so this fix has not addressed the issue. I'm just going to put it into chat mode again and see how it responds to that. I'm not going to cut all of this out because it's quite useful to see that no matter how good the prompting is, you often find these types of situations, and figuring out how to navigate them is just as important as knowing how to put together the functional requirements of the tool. So yeah, this is an interesting reflection in that it has its own ability to view the output, and the way that it's rendered for me is quite different. So when I've taken the screenshot and provided it back to it, it's actually understood or been able to see the problem firsthand. It's saying that it may be related to the container size. I could potentially... Oh, look. There we go. It's just because it's the container size and that it hasn't really done any responsiveness. And in fact, what I thought before was that it was hiding the two columns is not the case. It's actually just expanding outside the viewport. So not really an ideal experience. I think we're probably going to want to have something here that handles this a little bit better. Obviously, I've got quite a small screen size, so it's not really how it would be implemented, but I think we want to try to collapse this down a bit. So it's got a proposal, overflow, management, wrapper has explicit width. So it's suggesting that we use a scroll containment and to actually have the other elements sit within the original viewport, which is not great. I don't like the scroll effect. If we've only got a few details in here, we could potentially squeeze them up. I'm going to do a combination, I think. Please proceed with your proposal, which ensures that the buttons will always be visible in the existing viewport. I am not a big fan of the scroll within the Kanban itself. So preference is to squeeze the width of the Kanban columns. If they're relatively small and we restrict the title to a certain amount of characters, we might be able to get away with this to some extent. I think for now, let's squeeze it all up so it's all visible, and we can come back to this at a later point and determine if we need to manage it in some other way, especially if we have more columns that we need to handle. Right. You do need to remember that obviously when you're designing these applications that you're going to have people with different screen sizes. So it is a good idea often to design relatively small screen size, not on a big, large monitor. And then all of a sudden, when you go to view it on your laptop, for example, everything's cut off. So I do like to prefer building on the laptop screen. And even when you use the lovable chat widget, it squeezes it down even further. Okay, there we go. So now we're in here. We can do everything that we had wanted to, and I can validate that it's working fully, and we've got nice kind of width that's adjusting as we look at different view sizes. Okay, as the last bit of housekeeping before we move into roles and permissions and starting to set up the different types of users that are going to be interacting with the platform. Let's get our dashboard, seeing as that is a current page, showing something that's a little bit more useful. We've got the request this month and the number completed. Let's make sure they're up to date with real information. On the dashboard, we have active requests and completed requests this month. Can we just make sure that these are actually referencing the database entries now that we have it? Okay, so that's updated. We've got one active request as we have seen in our database, and we've got 0 completed as we haven't seen anything that's been fully completed. So we now have the first part of the project complete, where we've got the dashboard view, we've got the request view. These two are yet to be built out. And we've got a single standard user, and we've got the ability to view our requests in table or Kanban board format. And we can click into a request and see the details of it. We should be able to click in from either the Kanban or the table view, we have the ability to create a new request, and in this new request we can select whether it's a promotion or a special offer, which requires additional form fields to be completed, or we can complete the basic form and submit, and these new submissions are saved to the database and then populated in the request summary and the dashboard. Now it's time to start thinking about users. As you will recall, we have this Jane Doe user. It's not even a user at this point. It's essentially just a placeholder piece of text on the mock-up. There is no representation of a user in the back end, and there's no permissions, there's no login, there's nothing. Up until this point, we've simply built out what the portal will look like and been navigating around it as though it's completely permissionless, essentially. So how do we go about thinking about the implementation for this? First of all, I'll just say the easiest way to introduce roles and the concept of functionality across different people is to start at everything. Start at the God mode access, which is someone that can do absolutely everything, which is kind of what we've already built already, and then slowly remove functionality as you progress down into lower tiered users. So this way, if you think about it, if we're accessing it currently as a super admin, we have the ability to add a new request, and we can select a brand, and the ultimate user, let's say the MailMob admin role, could create a request for any brand and see any brand in the entire system here potentially, and that wouldn't be a problem. Then we can slowly restrict the access depending on the context of who's looking at the portal. So if you're just a MailMob team member, maybe you can't do certain functionality. And then if you're a client, for example, you're restricted to just see the campaigns that are under your account. This way, it's much easier to think about things by a series of removal rather than addition. So we do need to think, before we get too much further though, about what type of roles and structure we want to introduce. So let's come back into our product thinking and remind ourselves of the jobs to be done. So we have a client, which is essentially a business owner or a founder or marketer that wants to drive sales with their email campaigns and flows. We'll have an internal account manager, which is a MailMob representative that delivers the on-brand emails for the clients, an email strategist, which scopes the email concepts, and a graphic designer, which delivers visual designs. These three roles make up the MailMob component, and then you have the client role. Well, I shouldn't really say these are roles just yet. These are jobs to be done by specific user personas. Now, if we then translate those, so I've worked through with the client to understand what's the best way to structure this into roles, we're saying that a client is typically going to be split into two roles: an owner that can make requests, comment and manage a brand, add users, manage billing, these types of things. So this is normally the person who signs up and pays the subscriptions and can do everything that a client potentially can do. And then we may have a user, which is someone that a client may assign, someone in their team that can make requests and comment, for example, but they can't edit billing, they can't add users, these types of things. This is pretty standard for applications to split out the owner and user role. In the internal roles, we're going to have an account manager assigned as a MailMob admin. So this means they can assign work, they can change the status of the work, they can approve work, and they can comment. These comments can be internal and external. Internal just meaning that the MailMob team can see the comments, but the client can't see the comments. Then we've got the email strategist and the graphic designer. They're both going to have the same role, which is just a MailMob team member essentially, and they're going to flag things for internal approval. So once they've completed work, they can flag it as ready to be reviewed by the account manager. And they can comment as well, but they're just going to comment internally. So essentially, it's the account manager that owns the relationship with the client and will be the one that comments and shares feedback to the client and progresses the work along the pipeline. Okay, so I've taken this high-level description and put it into our ChatGPT discussion, the same one that we had for the PRD definition, and just asked it to help us slowly build out this a structure for how we might go about doing this. So let's go back to this prompt. Here's the roles, popped it in and asked, given these 4 types of roles, what types of sequencing do you think we should go to implement? As I mentioned, the principle is starting with the power and then restricting, which is pretty standard. And from there to start with a system admin, a super user essentially, a mail mob super admin, a mail mob admin. You could think about the super admin as one that sits overarching everything, which would have master control of the account. The team, then the client user, the client owner, client user. So it's given a hierarchy which we can start to implement to. And it's also supported with starting to build out a role matrix, which is quite standard, which says different functionality, who do we want to open it up to, and what role they would sit under. So this will be a good reminder for us to come back to and check and test as we're going through. Obviously, as soon as you start introducing roles, there's a lot more testing requirement because you're going to have to come in using these different roles and log into the tool to check that each of these users that has been set up, assigned to different roles, will only be able to do certain things in the product. So your testing requirements explode all of a sudden. This is quite a tricky challenge, and it just comes with the territory, I guess. You need to make sure that all of these different functionalities are applied properly. Of course, we're going to design it in a way that makes it easy to slowly check these things as we move through. But yeah, this is one of the things that starts to catch people out as they try to scale the functionality of their tool. Let's start to go through this process. So if we go back to our app, what I'm going to do is start by implementing the super admin or the admin role. And I think initially, just to kick this off, we're going to do some prep conversational work with the lovable agent. And I'm going to grab a high level. Let's copy this and pop this in. So it's time to start adding roles and permissions to the application. I would like to start off with the system admin role and then slowly introduce new roles that restricts access until we finally get to client user roles. Here is the hierarchy for which I would like to follow. Let's plan out an approach to start implementing this incrementally. And pop in the roles. Okay, so we can see here that it's done a lot of thinking. It's also made some assumptions because I didn't give it a lot of information to start with. I just wanted to start planning. And it's found that there's no authentication, which is not a surprise. It's listed out these roles, given them a description, and I'm going to check these over because this is pretty important functionality. So system admin, full system access, can manage everything. Mailmob admin is an administrator, team member, client owner, and client user basic. So that's all fine. The typical permissions, it's brought through some things, but I'm not 100% if these are perfectly accurate. Submit request, view their own prints. Yeah, and it's also missing some of the functionality that I had mentioned before. So what I'm going to do before we go any further is make sure that this is captured. Here is a list of the key functionality that we need to make sure is built in to the different role levels. There will be others, but this will give a high-level steer of what we want to include initially. Of course, we're not going to do all of the roles at once. We're going to slowly work from top down. So take this into account. And then I'm going to add these roles, the same ones that was put into the chat earlier, and we can submit this. So it should update the planning based on this. Okay, so we've now actually built out a similar matrix with the help of Lovable. Create requests, anyone, view all requests. Yeah, okay, so it's identified that a client request is going to be restricted to a brand. Assign requests is the admin role, change status, approve requests, flag for approval, anyone. You can see that in general, system admin has everything, and then we're slowly taking things away or restricting them as we move from left to right. Internal comments, external comments. Great, so we're allowing MailMob team to create internal comments, and the external comments is restricted. We don't have any comment functionality just yet, so same with approvals and these types of things. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I am a little bit worried that it's going to try and deploy too much functionality along with this, so I may want to put some guardrails on this as we implement. Okay, so let's also have a look. This is also a key thing to note. If you feel that the amount of work that's being implemented is too substantial, always try and chunk it down. Yeah, split it up into smaller bite-sized pieces so you know you can test it and you're not going to break everything by trying to bite off more than the system can chew. Okay, so it's asked some questions. Request assignment. When MailMob admin assigns a request, are they assigning it to MailMob team member? Should we track an assign to field on requests? Okay. And the approval workflow. Yeah. So yeah, it's starting to ask about some of the functionality that we've alluded to, which hasn't yet been built. So this is a bit tricky. We're putting a little bit of the horse before the cart here. We need to be careful to give it some context, but also restrict what it tries to build out at any point in time. So I'm going to answer these questions. When a MailMob admin assigns a request, they're assigning it to a MailMob team member. And yes, the assignment will be tracked against the request itself, the current assignee, and there'll only ever be one assignee. The actual assignee won't be visible to a client, however, we can hide that later, but tracking of the current assignee is important so that the MailMob team know who is looking after what piece of work at any point in time. For the approval workflow, we would also need a flag, which you've mentioned is flagged for review, and this would be an internal flag, which again is not visible to the client, but a team member in the MailMob team would want the account manager to then have a look at it. It doesn't. We don't want to have a different Kanban step for this. We will have a flag that can then be used to determine who it is, who's looking for it. The flag for review and pending approval is much the same thing. I think we can merge these concepts. We just have a single flag for review, which is then asking the account manager to have a look at the current request. For billing, we don't want to implement anything related to billing for now. Let's park this entirely. We now have a plan which has been put together. It's suggesting that our first user is set up and then we can promote them to be a system admin, and also that we want to disable the email confirmation step. So we'll come back to email confirmation. We want to push a lot of this functionality to later so that we can just test the core functionality for now. So I'm very happy that it's suggested we will disable the email confirmation and come back to that later. So I'm ready to implement. Let's do it. Alrighty. Okay, so we've had this implemented, and the first thing we can see is now that we're presented with an auth page, which means that we've been kicked out of the landing page. Essentially now it's looking for a user that's been authenticated that is logged in to be able to access the dashboard. So this is a good sign, at least, and it's done a pretty good job of building a auth or login, sign-in type portal. Some other things to note that has happened in the background, which I want to check before we move on too much further. There's been some database changes in Supabase. So we should have now a profiles table, a user roles table, an app role, and various functions, and some assigned to and flagged for review on the request field. So let's just have a look at what's happened here. If we come into the table editor and requests, so this was our original requests table, you can now see we've got this flagged for review. We've also got this assigned to field, so it's done what it said. We can also see now a new user roles table, which is empty, and this is where we're going to start to see users and their assigned roles being managed. And finally, in the auth table, this is where there's a lot of the users that will be managed and all of their associated email confirmation, passwords, recovery token. This is where all the user management is done within Supabase. So it's good to see that all of these changes have been made, and it's also noted that the front end, the auth page with login and sign up, has been generated. So there's a couple of things. It says the confirmation email and the authentication settings should be turned off. So I'm going to do that for now. So let's come in here and go to authentication. And we want to find where this is done. Okay, so when we come into Supabase authentication, we can see the sign-in providers, and we're allowing new users to sign up. We're going to leave this for now, and we're going to just turn off this confirm email and save these changes. So they won't need to confirm the email, and we don't need to configure all of the ways in which email is sent from the product just yet. Now we also want to sign someone up, and we're going to make this role a system admin. It's giving a SQL prompt. We can use this. I'll show you how to do that. There's other ways to do this as well. So if we come into the preview window, we should be able to test this setup. So here, it's actually it's saying welcome back. So let's instead click on sign up. All right, so it has said actually that there's a check your email. We sent a confirmation link to complete your registration. This is not the case. So I'm going to just mention this quickly. There was a notification stating that a email confirmation was sent when I signed up a new account. However, this has been turned off already in Supabase. So let's hide that functionality or disable that functionality until we turn back on the email confirmation step. Okay, while that's running, let's just take note here of the fact that we've got our user that has been updated. So the currently authenticated user was the one I just signed up. And if we look in Supabase, our table editor, we should be able to see we have Okay, so we don't have any user roles assigned just yet. We should, if we come into the auth, we now have this entry for the user in the auth table. So I'm guessing what it's asking here is to user roles. It's prompting to put this in so that we can promote a user to a system admin. And this is the user ID. So I'm going to ask it, can you see the user that was created? Can you please fetch the user ID and give me the correct SQL query to promote this user? Okay, so it's found the ID for me and it's saying insert into this table values for this user ID system admin. So I'm going to copy this and we can come into here and there's a SQL editor. You will need to know where this is. It's often quite useful. Also, as you're chatting with various LLMs, it will often provide ways to troubleshoot or to query the database. Supabase is essentially a SQL database, which you can then use more traditional SQL queries to execute commands or interrogate data. So let's give this a go. If we pop this in here and this was successfully done, if we come back into the table editor and the user roles, here we go. We've got this user ID with the system admin applied. So we can come back into here and I can say I've completed this step, and it appears as though the system admin tag has been applied correctly to the user once logged in. I'm just going to confirm this and keep it on chat mode so we're not using credits. Okay, excellent. So it's validated that everything has been done in phase 1. So we've got the role infrastructure, profiles, all of this information is being logged properly, and it's suggesting that we move on to phase 2. So we can add some kind of user management UI, so a page for the system admins to view all of the users and their roles and assign and change roles, things like this, to then have move on to more of the functionality. I think it will be useful definitely to have this user management UI in place so you can inspect from this tab as a system admin who is currently in the product and set up without having to go into the Supabase tables itself. So let's start with that one, and we're just going to do that. We're not going to ask it to do everything in phase 2. Let's just start with the user management UI, please, for the system admin and mailmob admin roles to be able to inspect who are the users on the platform. I would like this to be segregated on the sidebar menu somehow, so that it's very obvious that this is specific to a system admin role when you're looking at it, and it's clear that this won't be visible to other roles to avoid confusion about what is visible to what types of users. Okay, so that has been completed. You can see now as a system admin, there's this admin view and user management page that you can inspect the name, the email, and the role that is on the platform. So this is going to be really helpful later as we start to diagnose the setup and manage who's joining and what they can see. So we've got a few things to test later as well, as just making sure that this admin view is not visible to anyone that's not a admin. We shouldn't also just assume that a lot of the general functionality is working, so it's always a good idea to come back and check the other tabs. Let's also sign out and make sure that this signs out the user. If we sign out and then try to come back to the root URL, you'll see we'll be redirected to auth, which is great. Should be forced to sign in before you can actually see the portal. So here we go. We can sign back in with our single user account, and we're back in. Brilliant. Okay, so that's working as it should. Okay, so in order to actually test the roles, we're going to have to create some different users, and there is a simple way of doing this. Let's sign out for now. Well, first, before we sign out, I want to come back into the user management table view and allow the admin to change the role assignments. So this is the super admin. Remember, the system admin. So there's probably only going to be myself maybe that manages this. But for now, let's just make sure that I have the ability to do this in here to make it nice and quick. In the user management tab, which is available to the system admin role, I would like to be able to change the role assignments for individual users so that we don't have to use the Supabase SQL in order to update them as I start to add additional users in. Also, when a new user is created, can we by default assign them to the lowest level possible? That makes sense. So initially, I think this would be for a new account creation, basically a client admin role if they're not being entered into the product via invite from an existing client admin. That's the natural role for them to be set up with by default. Okay, so it looks now like there's a drop down. The system admins can now change user roles directly from the drop down in user management. You cannot change your own role, so that's why I'm unable to change my current role, which is a nice little safety feature. And the auto assignment of the default role is functional. So now we should be able to sign out of this current user. And what I'm going to do is create a new account. So I'm going to say my full name is test mailmob what do we call them? User mailmob team. That's right, mailmob team. And I'm going to go a nice little trick is that you can use the plus symbol and then add some kind of indication on here. This should not be team, it should be team. And here now we've it'll go, any email comms will go to the same email, Sean@foundana.com, but allows me to split them out and create an account. Right, so I'm a client. This has been created as a client user by default, which is good because that's what I had asked it to do. And if we come in here, we can see as a client user that you can see all of the requests irrespective of brand. So the user has come in with an example brand access because we haven't started to restrict what this information is being visible. So this is fine. We'll come back to it. It's expected, but again, this is why all of the testing at different levels is important. I don't see the admin portal either, which is, again, fine. If I sign back out and come back in as a system admin, you can see now this admin is showing again, so it's great, that's working. I can come into user management and we've got this test mailmob team here, and I can upgrade them to a mailmob team member. So that's showing that the role has been updated. Now if I sign back out and I come back in as a mailmob team member, we can start to see what the mailmob team member can do. So we can't see this admin again, and that's fine. I will check that I can do these flags. That is all good. And interestingly, this is showing assigned, but it's not showing who to. And it looks like I can't assign. So we've found some issues here, and it's time to start troubleshooting these. Let's just see. I can't review or in progress, which is great. Again, this is functionality we didn't want to have available to this role. I can filter, but obviously the core functionality for this role is to be able to flag and unflag for approval, and we shouldn't be able to assign. This was for the admin role. So we have, it's allowing me, looks like I'm able to assign, but I can't. I also can't see who the assignee is. So let's fix this up. As a MailMob team member, I can see the button for assigning someone, and I can see that someone has been assigned to one of the other requests, but I can't see the initials associated with that. So please update this so you as a MailMob team member can't assign other people, and you can see who has been assigned to other requests. It's important when you're prompting that you always set the context of the user role that is accessing the product. So this is why I'll say, as a MailMob team member, this way the agent knows from what perspective certain functionality needs to exist. Okay, so it picked up that there was an RLS policy as to why you couldn't see this assignee, but it's still got the button available, so I'm going to fix that up. As a MailMob team member, I can still see that there is an assignee button, and there's a hover state that suggests that I should be able to click it. I think when something is unassigned and you're viewing from a MailMob team member, you shouldn't see the button that suggests you can click to assign. It should just be blank. Perfect. Okay, now you can't see it at all. You can probably still, you can click into the request, and you can see the other teammates that have been assigned to the various requests. Okay, so I think I'm relatively comfortable that this is functional now from a MailMob team member perspective. Now we want to have a look at this from the perspective of a client. So I'm going to sign out, and let's sign up. Let's say client admin test, and create the account, and they should come through as a client user. Yep. So this is the default for the client admin to be set up as a new user. But we've got a problem because, as you can see, they can see all brands, and they can see this example brand. So this would be another company's requests. We want to hide this from them. So we need to associate a client user we've got here the client user, and just going to check the roles that we've got here. Roles, client user, client owner, Mailmob team, Mailmob admin, and system admin. I did specify that I wanted this to be a client owner when a new account is created rather than a client user, because they would be not associated with another brand. So I'm going to fix that first of all. It appears that the default setup upon creating a new account is a client user. However, this should be a client owner or a client admin type role, because they would be expected to be creating a new brand and setting up billing and things like this. So a client user would only really be created when a client admin actually invites someone in their team. So can we change the default behavior to, upon creation of a new account, default to a client admin, and ensure that it's only later on that we implement the client user role. Please also update the current client user to be a client admin. I could do that manually here, but it's called a client owner. So I'm just going to, where I've said new account client user, should be client owner. Client owner. Okay, let's see if it does this. Okay, and it's updated the client owner role, and it has fixed this default. So now we can see that I'm inspecting it from a client owner perspective. Now we want to add in the ability to restrict the request view to the brands that a client is associated with. As a client owner, I should not be able to see all of the pre-existing requests for brands that are not associated with my own client brands. So can we please start to restrict the requests table and Kanban views such that only brands associated with the client are actually visible? In order to test this, we can create an example brand 2 and then assign the current client owner role, the single user, to example brand 2, and have the other users that were created assigned to example, or have access to example brand 1. It won't be so relevant for the admins, as admins can see absolutely everything. We don't want to restrict their views, but for the client owner and client user roles, we need to ensure that they are explicitly linked to brands. Let's plan out how to do this before implementing. As this has a little bit of, technical challenges associated with it, I'm going to put this in chat mode and think this through with the agent first. Okay, so the agent has thought about this. It's looked at the current state. There are 3 requests, all associated with the example brand, and it's proposing a table that sits in between the users and the actual setup of brands that allows us to link the users to specific brands. And this is important because we will have the ability for a user to create multiple brands. I don't want to restrict it to a single brand. If there's an agency that comes on board that might have 10 brands, they will have a single user access, but they might have 4 or 5 different brands that will be different again to the amount that the admin users can see. So it's thought this through, it's defined the table structure. I'm happy with it, and there's no real front-end changes happening. It's all based on the RLS, which is how the tables are accessed depending on what user is asking it. So I'm happy. Let's implement. While this is happening, I've just noticed that there's the assigned column and the flag showing up in the client owner view. So we're going to have to get rid of those and make sure that they're not visible. Okay, so this is done. We can see here that now in the dashboard there's no active and no completed requests, which is great. There's no requests here in the request table because I'm in the context of the client owner. And if I hit new request, I should be able to just select from this example brand 2, which is great. In here, this is all restricted based on the RLS policies. If I create a new request and I select example brand 2, email campaign, test example brand 2 request, and let's go here. This is now showing up and we can see that it's just this. I'm not so sure about the sequential ID, so we might need to change that, but here we've just got the single request now showing up for the specific client under their own brand example 2, which is great. Now, if you recall, there are these columns for the flag and the assignee, so I'm going to get rid of those now. It appears that the client owner and most likely the client user roles can see the columns and in the table for the assignee and for the approval flag. It also most likely is showing in the board. I want to completely remove these columns altogether for these roles, and we shouldn't have them visible at all. We shouldn't even show that it has been assigned, even if it's not showing who it's been assigned to. Same for the flag field. So can we clean up this table in the board view for a client perspective, please? It's not going to be the greatest to be able to test this just because the new ticket or the new request that was created has not yet been assigned or flagged, so we can't actually see it here, but we should be able to see that the columns hopefully will be completely hidden. Okay, so it's cleaned up this and looks a lot better. I'm going to check the board as well. Yep, all this functionality still works. Brilliant. Okay, last of all, I want to start implementing some settings here because we're introducing this concept of brands. It's important that we're starting to consider how a user might go about creating or managing a brand, and also potentially any user preferences. So let's start by cleaning up this sidebar. Can you please remove the campaign planner from the sidebar? We will bring this in later, but for now it's not being used. Let's also create the settings page, and I would like it to have a tabular menu within the page itself along the top of the page that allows a user to switch between preferences, like notification preferences, brands, and also just user info, so things like email, account, and uploading potential for an avatar even. Let's plan out how this might work. Okay, I'm happy with this. Let's implement the plan. Okay, this is all implemented, so let's have a look. We've lost the campaign planner. We've got settings with notifications, preferences. All right, this is all obviously fictional. It's not being controlled currently. We have brands and user info. So the avatar upload is coming soon. Great. Full name. Looks like it can be edited. Save changes, and that's fine, and the email cannot be changed. So happy with that. Brands is just simply a looks like a list currently. We can expand this out a bit further into the brand guidelines and making sure that we've uploaded information for each of the brands. Notifications as well. None of this is functional, so let's just tidy this up quickly. Notified when a new request is submitted, status changes, new comments, weekly digest. Please remove the weekly digest and make all of the new request submissions, status change, and new comments switched to off and not editable by the user, given we're not handling this functionality currently. You can add a similar coming soon like you did for the user info avatar. It's important where stuff is not working to actually just hide it or to make it very clear to the user that it's not working. Otherwise, you'll forget it and it will exist in the product and people will expect it to work and it won't, which is a frustrating user experience. But it is handy to have them exist as almost placeholders for functionality that you need to come back to. Okay, it's done the job, but it's left them as on, and I want to indicate that these should be left as off. You've disabled the toggles, but the toggles are still set to on by default. I want them to be set to off so that it's clear that the preferences are coming soon and the functionality to notify is coming soon. Okay, that's all fixed. Great. One last thing I noticed in the dashboard, we're still talking about Jane. So let's fix that. On the dashboard, you welcome back Jane as what is, I guess, placeholder text. Can you please update this to use the name of the user that is currently logged in? Okay, it's saying welcome back client. I just want to check this. We go to your, let's rename this to, I think it's taking the first name. Let's call this, let's try this. So we're coming here into the users, got the email, all their details, phone. Great. Last of all, I think we should be introducing the concept of a team. So I'm going to add this in. Okay, so I now want to introduce the concept of a team because a client admin will have team members within their team that can access the portal as well. So let's start in the settings menu and do that. Please can you add a team tab within the settings view. I would like this to simply list out the team members that sit under the organization. In order to do this, we may need to implement an organization structure, remembering that a client admin is essentially creating an organization, and that organization will have, by default, one initial brand, but it could be multiple brands. Any team members that get created under the organization should have access to all of the same brands that sit under that organization to begin with. Let's plan this out together. Okay, so it's reviewed this and looked at the current structure, and we've got this brands table that links users to brands. But actually, we probably want to have an organizations table that a user is linked to an organization, and then the organization is linked with brands. It has suggested two alternatives, one being a simpler approach where we just have users being linked to each other by who they were invited by. But this could cause some issues in future, and I would like to have the ability to better manage organizations as a whole. So I'm going to go for the more scalable full organizations approach and proceed with the plan that was suggested. Please proceed with the full organizational structure approach. If we come into the public schema in Superbase, we can now see that there's this organizations view, and that is separate to the brands. So we're going to start to see this populated as we link them to different organizations. So let's just make sure that this is functional before we proceed too much further. We've now got this Teams tab as well. The invite team member is coming soon, so it's got the idea that we want to just indicate that stuff will come but not implement it just yet. And we should now have the brands and the teams all separate. So it's created the organizations, it's added the organization ID to brands and profiles table, created the helper functions, get user organization ID, added the team tab, and it's only visible to client users, not internal users. Invite functionality placeholder for future steps. Okay, and we need to set up organizations for existing users. So we should be doing this, and I'm going to just set up an example organization for the current client. Yes, please. Let's create an example organization as the first organization that the first client admin test user is assigned to, and reroute the example brand 2 that we set up under that account to now be linked to the organization as opposed to the user. Let's now add in the settings page a view of the organization, or just a recognition, for example, under the team tab, that adding a new user will be doing so under the existing organization that has been set up by the client admin. And also in the user info, I think we should list out the organization as well. Finally, can we reorder these? I would like to have user info first, team second, brands third, and notifications last. Okay, we've now got user info with the organization. We've got the team members, an example organization with access to your brands. Yeah, great. And the brands in here, and notifications preferences. So I think this is working quite well now. And at least we're visualizing all the information that is needed. I want to do one last thing, which is the setup of the brand that happens at the start of the onboarding process for a new user, because currently there's no way to do that. Just setting up a user comes in with no brand. So I think we should enforce that a new user that is created at an admin level is prompted to create a organization and a associated brand. In order to do that, we can perhaps figure out if they're an agency or a brand owner, and then we can give them a different path for their initial setup. When a new client owner or a new user signs up and they're defaulted to a client owner, there is currently no way of auto creating a new organization and new brand for them to manage. This should be a simple onboarding journey that prompts the user to start by specifying whether they are a single brand or an agency, for example. So we need to ask them if they're going to be managing multiple brands or just have the one. If they're using just the one, we should create the organization at the same time as the first brand. So the organization will also be the brand name. We can use the same for both. In the case of an agency, we'll need to ask them for their organization name and then for their brand name, which will probably be the first of many. So this needs to be quite a simple, user-friendly experience. So can you please plan out how we should actually build this onboarding journey? Okay, so it's understood that there's no proper handling of a new user and that no organizational brand will automatically be created. So we need to have this single brand or agency prompt for a single brand, creating the org and the brand at the same time with the same name, and an agency asking for the org name first and then the first brand name separately. And let's build that now. Okay, the onboarding journey is now completed. So let's test it out. I'm going to have to sign out and create a new account. So let's call this sign up org test. Okay, create the account. Right, so we've been flipped over to the onboarding journey, and here it's taken up a full page, which is quite nice. We're forcing it to follow through this process. Let's get you set up. Are you managing a single brand or multiple brands? So one company or product agency, perfect, managing multiple clients. So let's test the single brand and continue. And then what's your brand called? Let's call this test single brand and complete setup. Okay, it said welcome, your account is all set up. It's created the user, it's set me up as a client owner, and I'm not 100% sure about this being called client owner, by the way. Probably want to remove the client. In any case, let's come to settings. So here we've got the organization as test single brand and brands as also test single brand. So that's fine. It's done that all automatically for us without any problems. And we should probably test the agency route as well. So I'm going to sign up and sign out and sign up with test agency test plus. And here it's now asked us for the same thing. Let's go agency this time. Not 100% sure on the formatting, but we can come back to that. So what's your agency called? Okay, let's call it e-commerce marketing agency. Continue. And then it's now add your first brand. So first brand from agency. And complete the setup. Okay, so now we're in here and we can see, again, we're a client owner, settings. The team is under the e-commerce marketing agency. Here's the organization. The brands is first brand from the agency. Cool. So this is great. I think finally we should allow the functionality for multiple brands to be added. So let's just do that now, and then we've got the agency version covered. In the Your Brands view, let's add the functionality to add an additional brand. For now, obviously, the brand only has the name, but let's create that ability now with a simple icon button and pop-up modal to create the brand. There's no brands page either, so it's literally just listed here. We will need to come back to this too, as part of our plan was managing brand assets, and we can also incorporate that into the onboarding journey later on as well. Okay, I can now, I can't. Failed to create the brand. So what's going on here? I'm just trying to troubleshoot this in the brands ability. It looks like we may not have the ability, the RLS policy to do this. So let's inform the agent of this. As a client owner, I am looking to add a new brand into the Your Brands view via the modal. However, it is presenting me with an error. I suspect this is related to RLS policies, but please troubleshoot and fix. Okay, so that should be fixed. Let's test it. Second agency brand, create the brand. Done. All right, now if we go to requests, let's double check. This is a new user, remember. So if we create a new request, first brand from agency, second agency brand is what is available. Also in here in the filters, we can see we've got these two brands here. So that's amazing. One little final thing, this tag here I'm not too happy with. I don't think it's necessary, and we've called this a team member, so I'm going to want to fix that up. For the client accounts, we've got the client owner and probably the client user tab shown on the bottom left hand corner. I don't want this visible from a client perspective. You can keep it for the internal roles. We should instead only have this listed out in the user info view and the Your Team view, so showing what roles are associated with each team that they're associated with and whether they're an owner or a member, a user. Okay, this is, it's been removed from here, but we've still got team member here, which I'm not liking. So let's make sure this is fixed. I'm just going to check the user info first. Organization, email agency, role, owner. Yep. Okay. That's not updating in the team tab. In the team tab within settings, you have the team members associated with the organization. But for the agency test role, so the current signed in user, which is an owner, it's showing that they're a team member on the right hand side. Please also make sure this reflects the correct role. Okay, so that should be updated. Let's double check to see if this is working. Okay, we've got the owner showing now, which is correct. Excellent. So now in terms of the settings view, we can have newly signed up clients declaring what organization and brand they're a part of and visualizing all their user info, their team info, their brands, and their notification preferences. And we've got placeholders where certain functionality is coming, but they can also create multiple brands to then submit requests under each of those brands. So this is getting very close to a fully functional app. We're going to have to do some testing across all of the different roles and see if there's any final functionality that needs to be fixed. But this is what I would start to call the MVP, ready for testing with the client. Okay, so we are nearly at the point in time to create the brands, which will give the MailMob team more information to know about how they're going to actually build out email campaigns for each of the clients. But before we do that, I just want to fix up some of the user management steps and support the admin role with managing the different users on the product. So here I'm just back in the system admin role, looking at the user management view. Obviously, we can change the owner role. We can also potentially change the names of the members if we want, but we've got no view of organization or brands associated with these people. So let's start by just adding some functionality here. In the user management view that the system admin can reach, I would like to add more information about the organizations that any client roles are associated with and the brands as well. We could do that in this table, or we could actually allow the click-through on a specific user to show the organization and the brands that they're associated with. I think we should do the click-through to get organization and brands, but we should also just present the organization in the user management table with a filter for the organization. Okay, we've now got the user management view updated. We've got the organizations included. We've got this admin user's ID. Rather than actually clicking on this, it's prompting for just to inspect it via the row. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at the e-commerce marketing agency. And in here, we've got user details, the organization, and the brands, which is cool. That's exactly what I was after. One thing I've noticed is that this changing of the role is a little bit delicate and dangerous, so I might just add a double opt-in for that. In the user management view in the admin, for the system admin role, I can see the drop-down changer of the role. I think this is quite a sensitive change, so let's add a confirmation step to this role and provide some warning about the consequences of this action. While it's doing that, we can see organizations here. We can switch between all of the different organizations and filter. Let's have a look at example organization. Perfect, the filtering is working well. Okay, so this is done. So let's just check this. If we're going in a client owner, let's try to upgrade this client owner to MailMob team. And it's presented a warning. You're about to change the role from client admin test, and warning this will grant internal access. Okay, I don't want to do that. So that's great. Now we are hopefully ready to start adding a bit more visualization of the brands, especially for the MailMob team members. So the MailMob team members should be able to see all of the brands and understand, their guidelines and have a look at them quickly. So we want to add a new menu here, which will include brands, for example, brand management. So let's start with that. The MailMob team role members and above, so including the MailMob admin and the system admin, should also have access to a new sidebar menu that is called MailMob team. And within this, there should be a brands tab that is accessible. And within the brands tab, I want the people with access to be able to see a table in a similar structure to the user management view that shows all of the brands and the organizations that they're linked to. Let's start simply with that. Perhaps we also show the owner email in that table, and then we can build out from there. Okay, this has been done. So we've now got this brands tab. Let's have a look in here. We can see all organizations and then all of the brands and the owner emails when they were created. So the organization, the brand name, the organization, and we can filter by organization similarly to what we can do in the user management tab. So that is great. I would like to also be able to click through to then explore information about the brand itself so that we can start to create this brands page as well. Okay, now let's expand the brands view functionality to allow click through from there into the brands page, which will summarize everything that there is to know about a brand. This will ultimately be accessible via the client settings page as well. But for now, let's just build it out as accessible via the brands page view and populate a brand with all the basic information we know about them currently, which we will soon extend. Okay, so that's run. Let's have a look here. So we've got similar functionality to be able to go into a brand itself. And we have the brand, we have the users, we have the organization, and a bit of information about this. So this is great. So now, if we just look at our hierarchy of pages, we've got users, and we can explore individual users. We've got brands, we can explore individual brands. And then on the user management and the brands page, we can also see the organizations that those users and brands are associated with. One thing I did notice just now on the user page is that it's a bit hard to understand who's a client and who is an internal team member, so I'm going to add an additional selector. On the user management view, can you please, along the top where we have the filter on the right-hand side, add a toggle that goes between all internal and external users so that we can quickly switch between seeing all users or just the internal mail mob admin, system admin, and team members versus the external client users. All right, and we've got that here now. So all users, internal users, and external users that we can switch between. The selection toggle, yeah, it looks like it's copied, but it doesn't have the hover effect. I'm just going to fix that. Please update the hover effect coloring for selecting on the toggle to match the requests table view selector. Okay, finally, we have this brands section, which is viewable by the mail mob team, but I want individual brand owners to also be able to access it and edit it. So we need to be able to get into it from the Your Brands view as well. In the normal user settings area, there is the brands view that lists out the brands for which the internal user has access to. So and external users as well. From here, I want to be able to discover the brand summary page as well. So can we make sure that anyone that has access to their own brands via the settings tab can also click through into it to actually edit and or view all of the information about the brand itself as well. I don't like the just the way that the brands are presented as well. Can we have this in a more of a list fashion with better icons, and eventually there'll be logos and favicons for these individual brands. So let's make this presented better with an easier way to see as well, that you can click through to understand more about the individual brand from the settings page. Okay, so that should now be listed out and accessible via the brands view as well. Here we go. We've got the brands. As I'm a system admin, I can see everything. But let's just check that this can be clicked through and we come through to the similar brands view here with the brand view details, and this goes back to settings. If I come in via the brands view here, it should take me back to brands. Yep. So the navigation setup and how that all works is working fine. Excellent. So I think now we've got all of that structured well. So the final step will be adding details about the actual brands themselves. Okay, so now that we have the structure to enable clients to access their brands, we're going to want to build out a whole lot more information about the actual brand guidelines and all of the stuff that helps the MailMob team actually build on-brand emails. So I have this summary from the client where we can list out all of the things that is helpful in presenting the brand guidelines to the MailMob team. So what I'm going to do is start a prompt, recording a prompt, and just talk through all of these things. Okay, so now that we have the brand structure in place, we need to manage brand guidelines, which holds everything about the brand and gives information to the MailMob team on what the brand look, feel, visuals, copy, content is all about. So I'm going to list out all of these things, and then we can plan how to implement it. First of all, a brand will have a website. So we need a website field. We can also upload brand guidelines. Brand guidelines can come in different forms. It can be a document upload, so typically a PDF, for example. So it could be an upload of a document itself, or it can be the individual components that are in brand guidelines. For example, brand colors. So a list of the colors that the brand uses. So color pickers, for example, primary, button, contrast, background, all of those types of colors. Fonts, which are from a pick list of fonts and could potentially be an upload of a font file. And these need to be split out between headers and body, things like that. And then copy guidelines and visual guidelines. So some free text fields on copy and language and also visual guidelines. There should also be an ability to provide links to asset folders, so imagery folders. So there should be a way to add multiple links to different folders with a labeling convention. So a link to a folder, an external folder, along with a label or description title. There should also be a upload of a favicon and a primary logo for the brand, and there should also be any screenshots of previous campaigns. Let's leave the screenshots for now, for later as optional. But finally, there will be links to tools such as Klaviyo and Shopify. So we want to have the ability to eventually link this to a Klaviyo account and a Shopify account via API access, ideally. Let's have placeholders for this currently, and we'll come back to that functionality. Okay, it's inserted it in here. Let's grab it and pop it into here. I'm just going to say, let's plan this out together before implementing. Okay, so it's having a look at all of the structure, and also this is the first time that we're going to implement any kind of file storage in the product. So it we'll need to figure out how to make use of the Supabase file storage functionality. It's listing out all of the elements that I spoke about and proposing a database structure and the UI for the brand detail page. The implementation suggests the database and storage setup first, then the view mode, then the edit mode, finally file uploads and integration placeholders. So it's got some questions before we go ahead, so let's answer these. The clients themselves, as long as they're an admin, should be able to edit their own brand guidelines. All of the internal roles should be able to do it as well, but primarily we expect the client admin roles, not the client user roles, to be able to do this. For the color formatting, let's have a preset list of the types of color formatting, but let's make it reasonably comprehensive, perhaps like 10 different variations of the different types. They don't have to select them all. They can put however many they want in as they need. For the font selection, perhaps we start with a free text field, and that way we don't have many issues with the uploads, because there's going to be lots of different options, and we can have a placeholder for uploading the font file. But remembering that we need to be able to specify these fonts for lots of different options. Perhaps we actually use a predefined list from Google Fonts, and we also have a button for if it's not available in that list, that they can specify it and just type it in free text. I think we should start with phase 1 and 2 first, and then add the edit functionality afterwards, just for ease and simplicity. Okay, I'm happy with this. Let's do it. Okay, so the brand guidelines build out is now complete. So let's come in and have a look at an example brand. So this is an example brand which has been generated earlier. We've got the requests which are listed against it. It's got the overview, the guidelines, the assets, and the integrations all individually tabulated out. So here we can come into now the guidelines. We can see website, brand colors, typography, copy guidelines, and visual guidelines. We've got assets, which are the primary logo, favicon, brand guidelines, document. I'm not sure. I think the brand guidelines document should probably sit in the guidelines, and the asset folders, should be there. That's fine. We've got the integrations placeholders coming soon, so that's all good. So I think in general this is great, apart from the fact that the brand guidelines document is under assets, and really that should exist under the guidelines. So I'm just going to fix that up. Currently you have the brand guidelines document sitting under the assets, and given that's specifically a brand guidelines document, I think we should put that under the guidelines section and put it right at the top in the case that we have one. Otherwise, then all of the individual fields below can be completed as well. I would also move the website from the guidelines to the overview. That feels like something that is much more linked to the overview of the brand itself. For the website and the overview section, let's make sure we prompt for the website when we are going through the onboarding process. So can we add this to the flow to make sure the website is populated on as early as possible, seeing as this is quite important information at both the organization and the brand level if need be. Attached to the Shopify and the Klaviyo favicons, can you add these into the integrations page just so it looks a bit more on brand for those integrations? Attached are the Shopify and Klaviyo favicons. Can you please add these into the integrations page? Okay, now that we've structured all of the brand guidelines correctly from a visual perspective, we should be able to populate these out. Just checking back in the Superbase tables, and yes, we do have the brand guidelines. We have all of that table ready and waiting to be populated. So let's start with asking it to enable the edit functionality for all of these fields that we've just created, and then we can check that the file upload functionality will work at the same time. Please proceed with the edit functionality for the brand guideline components, including all of the elements under the guidelines and assets tabs, as well as the website, of course, in the overview. Okay, so the edit functionality should now be complete. So let's come into a brand and have a look at this. So the first thing I can see is the website is editable. Let's just try something here. And I'll save that. Oh gosh, the link color is terrible on that, so let's fix that. The website link color is not great. It's too light. Can we use a more darker contrasting color for the link on the website once it's loaded, please? So I'll get that fixed. While that's running, we can come into guidelines. So, all right, we have an uploaded PDF. I'm just going to see if I've got a PDF document that I can test. Okay, I'm going to upload a PDF. Let's go to downloads and brand. Okay, so it's saying that is saved successfully. Excellent. I'm going to try and download this and just see if that works. Okay, excellent. And brand colors. Let's try add a new color. Accent. Looks great. Add another color. Background. Great. Typography. Custom font option here. I don't really like the structure. I also noticed that in the table we're saving this as a header font. Header font is custom. Body font is custom. I want this to be extensible, so not just restricted to 2 fonts. So I'm going to come back to that. Let's just have a look at the copy guidelines. Let's save this. Okay. And check the visual guidelines are editing. Let's do a couple, like this. Great, that's working well. So, yeah, the main thing I don't quite like at the moment is this typography section. On the typography section, we've only got header font and body font, and this is also built into the table structure as dedicated columns. I would prefer to keep typography as a whole and have it more extensible, similar to brand colors, so that we can add a list of different font types. Perhaps you might want to list out 5 to 10 options of the font types, and then they can select from the drop-down list or add a custom one. This needs to be better managed so it's not an individual column in the table, and when you start, it should default to having none rather than showing header font and body font only. It should, similarly to the brand colors, start with nothing, and then you can add in individual items line by line. Okay, just go back. Let's have a look at the website. Okay, this is better now. I'm still on hover. It shows that color, not great, but I'm happy with that now. It's a bit better. While that's also happening, we can come in here and look at the primary logo. Let's see if I can find one as a test. And I'm just going to find logos. Okay, so let's come into assets. We can upload a logo here. I might actually try the drag and drop as well. Nope, that doesn't work. So we might want to enable that, but for now, I'm just going to have a look. Up logo. Okay, that has worked. Do I have a favicon? Let's just upload a favicon. Let's use this one. Okay, great. So they're working well, and there's the replace functionality there. There's an assets folder. I'm going to check this. So label test folder and link.com/link. Cool. Okay, so you can click through to there to go to the link. And let's do another one, test2.link.com. Okay, amazing. So these folders are working quite well. I have noticed that the favicon and the logo is not being referenced. I think we can actually reference that now in different places in the product. And it's still working away at this typography fix. So let's wait for that to get sorted. And well, it looks like it's done now. So typography here. Interestingly, I'm not sure that these brand colors saved. Let's check that this is working. Did I not save it? I may not have actually saved it. Okay. Typography. So let's select a font type. Okay, button, CTA, and font. We've got a few here. DM Sans, add the font. Okay, and let's try another one. Navigation. We need to add font. And here, it's a subheading. I don't like that this custom font is right at the bottom. In the font selector, you have the custom font option right at the bottom of the drop-down list. I think we should remove it from here and add a tick box or something for a custom font and have it sit below the font selector. So if you, or above the font selector potentially, wherever makes sense, to then disable the drop down and allow for a just a custom text field initially. Let's start with that, and then later we can have the upload functionality. But for now, just we need to pull out the custom font indicator from the drop down. It's too hard to find, and it needs to be managed separately. There's this floating 2 as well, which need to get rid of. Okay, so this should be done now. Let's see. Okay, so we can use a custom font. It'll remove the ability to select the font. And here we can put a test custom font in. It's not allowing me, font type, of course, and add that. And now it's got, okay, so the caption, test, custom font, and custom listed here, and save that. Excellent. Let's get rid of these 2s and 3s. The number counter for the brand colors and typography sits in the middle and is not really required. I think we can drop that altogether. Okay, in the example brand, there is a placeholder for a brand favicon, I think. We have uploaded assets for this brand, so I would want you to use the favicon if it exists. If no favicon, use the primary logo. If no primary logo or favicon exists, then you can revert to the placeholder for a brand, which at the moment is not very visible and doesn't look very good. So can we make that a darker form, and then add where we have brands shown in tables? So for example, in the request table, please add the favicons as well, along with the brands table in the MailMob team view. So we should start to use the favicons or these logos for the brand where amazing. So we now have the favicon being populated from the assets where it exists. And let's have a look to see. Okay, it hasn't been populated in the Your Brands. I wonder if we've got it anywhere here. It looks like it's still working through those components. So we'll come back and have a look. Requests and brand pages, are now being worked on. Perfect. So the brand here in the request table is now uploaded where it exists. Let's also have a look at the brands table. I think this one will be next. Update the Your Brands in the settings list view to also use the favicon structure that we talked about before, and also the more contrasting version of the placeholder. I want this to be consistent with the subsequent brand page. Okay, here we go. That's all done. One thing I am a little bit worried about is speed of these icons and the size of them, but I think for now we can not worry about that. Our MVP is essentially ready. Let's do one last thing to add a nice little bit of functionality to the look and feel. Okay, now let's complete the avatar upload, the profile picture upload for the user. Okay, this is sorted. Let's try uploading. Okay, amazing. I wonder if this will work for it. User management. Has it added it in here? It hasn't thought to add it in here. So let's just see where this is. Oh, it hasn't saved it, I think. Save changes. The upload functionality requires the Save Changes button to be clicked. I noticed this in the user information, but also in the I think it was in the font and the actual color selector. But can we have this as soon as it's selected or an upload is done, that it actually just auto saves? Because I feel like that's an additional step that people will forget. It's fine for text edits, but for these uploads and specific selections of colors and fonts, then they should autosave. Okay, I'm just testing this functionality. And yes, it's auto-saved it now, which is great. Let's add in another brand color. This will do. Okay, and that's auto-saved. In the user, however, I noticed that the upload avatar of the image is not working. The upload avatar image doesn't seem to be saving. I've uploaded it twice and it doesn't repopulate when I come back to the tab. Can you see what is going on there? Also, let's call it a profile pic, not avatar. Okay, that seems to be working now. On the requests view where we have a profile pic loaded, can we please ensure that that will show for anyone that has authorization to see that, as well as in the user management tab where we have a name, we may as well put an avatar next to it if one exists. Excellent, this is great. Although the user management table is now a bit cluttered, let's remove the email column. In the request table, let's please move the assignee profile pic and the button next to, just in front of the flag for approval. Okay, so I'm literally fine-tuning now, and we are well beyond the minimum viable product needed by the client to run their entire operation. So MailMob system should be up and running and ready to roll. I'm going to close it there, and now would be the right point in time to go back to the client and assess whether or not this fits all of their needs. So that's the build, and has been a solid effort. But as you can see, there's a heap of functionality now that is ready to roll.